right, everyone. So today we are going to be talking about deal making, more specifically, The Art of the Deal, the book by Trump. We're going to get into a bunch of the concepts that he uses, but we're really going to focus on one important thing and give some examples, and then potentially get into some of the other topics as well. So, Matthew, do you want to start us off? What are the 11 key tenets that Trump puts in his book?
Before we get into those 11 deal-making tactics themselves, the whole purpose of what we're doing today is an agnostic dissection of Trump's framework and strategies that he uses, sometimes to great effect, other times not so much, in deal-making in general. It's very important for you to understand the strategies of divisive figures throughout history, whether they were good, whether they were bad. There were things that worked for them when it comes to economic or political or commercial strategies that they themselves put into place. You need to learn what they did, what worked, what didn't, because you need to identify when it's being used on you or to people around you, and to also use those strategies yourself in certain scenarios. One last thing before we jump into it. This is not a political discussion. This isn't getting into any opinions that we may have or may not have in the current state of the world. My politics personally come from a place of obviously being socially open-minded, but they're very much so driven by economics and business and fiscal viability as well. But this is a agnostic dissection of what has worked for Trump and where he is currently using those tactics today. So The Art of the Deal, in chapters 2 and 3, Trump lays out an 11-step framework of certain tenets that have always worked for him, from his early days as a real estate developer and investor, all the way to now as a politician. So there is one that he uses to great effect, which will be the last one we hit, number 11, that we are going to focus on today, and it's going to be much of the focus of our conversation today. So in The Art of the Deal, the first of the 11 tenets that he focuses on that you need to do is you need to always think big when it comes to deal making. You need to think larger than what you may already be thinking right now. You need to think about a realm outside of what you think is possible, what you can get from negotiations, what you can get from any type of transaction in general. Number 2 is to protect your downside, and the upside will take care of itself. So manage your risks, hedge your bets. In some cases, do arbitrage. Manage the downside and the risks of your transactions, and the upside will take care of itself. Number 3 is maximize your options. Make sure that you always have a portfolio of options available to you across the board. Number 4 is to know your market. Know the market that you operate in and out. Know it very well. Know the details as a key figure, analyst, researcher, in any scenario, any title that you want to throw out there. Know the details and nuances of your market. Number 5 is to use your leverage. Use your leverage across the board in any way possible. He does that all the time, which we'll get into. Number 6, enhance your location. That's more relevant for real estate, but it's also important in many scenarios for any other deal-making transaction as well. Number 7, fight back. He does that all the time.
Definitely does.
Number 8, deliver the goods. You need to deliver your goods because people talk and everybody seems to know each other. People talk in industries, people know mutual connections. You need to deliver on your promises. Number 9, contain your costs. Number 10, have fun. And number 11, the one that we'll be focusing on the most today, is get the word out through bravado. Play to people's fantasies, utilize the media, utilize your PR, utilize advertising, get the word out on anything that you do. So it's interesting, as much as Trump is a salesman and everybody has him figured as being a salesman, which you would think when you see a book titled Art of the Deal, he's actually a marketer, probably a better marketer than he is a salesman himself. He uses a strategy that Henry Kissinger used to great effect, which is to be tough in public, but to be light in private. It's a Henry Kissinger tactic, And what he does is he applies pressure through the media, through large, bold statements, through videos, through tweets, through posts, through anything that he can. He utilizes every media channel available to him, and he applies a ton of pressure on people and his counterparts publicly. But the man behind the curtain and the man behind the scenes across from his counterpart at the desk is actually much more cordial and friendlier in private negotiations. It's very interesting. So he will always apply heavy public pressure on countries, on people, on businesses, on counterparts, so that he can set up this leverage so that when he goes into private negotiations, he can be a little bit friendlier. It catches them off guard, and they have to report to their constituencies and have the public sentiment against them when they go into these negotiations with him. It's very similar to kind of, I think, other people that utilize this to great effect or did at their prime would be Floyd Mayweather, the boxer, Conor McGregor, the UFC fighter, LeVar Ball from Big Baller Brand. Kids are Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, LiAngelo, etc. Applying public pressure. What do you think are some good examples of ways that he's done this recently, historically, that would illustrate this point best?
So the first one that obviously comes to mind is the tariffs going on right now. But I actually want to touch on one that is very similar. It was done earlier in this second term, a couple months ago, which was the tariff situation and trade imbalance situation with Canada and Mexico. Not the current one, but the one a couple months ago when he first got into office. And if you remember, what he did was start talking about Canada needs to be the 51st state. He started using all of this explosive rhetoric that, you know, the media, social media, basically everybody was talking about and joking about at the time. Some people were going crazy, some people loved it. But what it was doing was generating buzz, generating almost an inflamed idea or perception about what Trump wanted to do with Canada and Mexico at that point. Gulf of America, for example, as well. That was kind of the thing for Mexico. And so he set a precedent, a extreme, and made it seem like he was going to just completely take over these countries. Obviously we knew he weren't, especially if you read Art of the Deal. But what that did was, along with the tariffs that he implemented, was he scared Mexico and Canada to the negotiating table in less than a day. And what he got when he first got into office was, at the cost of freaking a bunch of people out, saying we're going to invade Canada, change Mexico to the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, we're going to destroy the drug cartels and invade Mexico, whatever. He got from that situation, without doing anything except inflaming the media, he got a commitment of $10 billion from Canada, 10,000 troops from Mexico, and a commitment to stop the flow of fentanyl through the northern and southern borders. So that's a big example, and that's classic Art of the Deal.
That's a great example of a recent way that he's utilized it. I think another one that we talked about right before this as well would be what he did with Zelensky from Ukraine. What do you think about that one? How do you think that applies here?
So that was another interesting example. The entire situation with Zelensky was the exact same situation, almost to a T, the exact same rule book. What was happening was, when Trump got into office, obviously he was saying that he's going to end the war on day one. Obviously, everybody who understood the situation knew that wasn't going to happen. But he came in saying all these crazy things, like he was going to cut off all the aid to Ukraine. He was going to leave them on their own to die, whatever. And so the Europeans bought into it, but most importantly, Zelensky bought into it. And so when he went to the White House, they had an entire conversation closed doors, but then during the media meeting after, when they were going to sign a resource deal in exchange for protection from the United States was going to get resources from Ukraine, and we were going to commit to helping them in the war still against Russia, sending them aid. What happened was there was an offhand comment made by J.D. Vance, to which Zelensky then replied to, and then the entire conversation exploded. And what happened was Trump said he was going to cut all of the funding to Ukraine. He wasn't going to help them until they began to be reasonable and seeing it our way and being respectful of the United States, who has been giving them this aid this whole time. Of course, that was under the Biden administration. But what that did was everyone went ballistic. Everyone started saying, oh, you're going to let Ukraine die, get them eaten up by Russia, whatever. The European leaders started coming to Washington and begging for it. And from my perspective, I don't know if you feel the same way as well, but honestly, I think that entire conversation, although maybe not scripted, was definitely planned to have a blow up, especially because normally media meetings don't happen for an hour straight. And it happened at the very end when things were about to be wrapped up. So my assumption is that Trump and JD went in there trying to inflame the situation. Can't confirm this. And that allowed the negotiations to fall apart and make Zelensky seem like the bad guy. Whether or not that was the intention, that's what did happen. They left. Trump threatened to cut off all aid. And then, lo and behold, a week later, we get the resource deal. And Trump got exactly what he wanted.
Signed by Zelensky.
Signed by Zelensky.
So that's another great example of how he did this recently. We could just operate by assumptions here, but he inflamed Zelensky in that meeting. It was a huge public blow up. It was on everything, everywhere. Everybody was hearing about it. It had a lot of commentary across the board, and it applied public pressure on Zelensky to play ball. And he ended up playing ball and signing the ceasefire agreement that same week. So that's another example of how he's using this right now in current times politically. He did this a lot in his first term. It's in his nature now. So once again, whether you agree with his tactics or you agree with his approach and his politics, it does not matter. You need to understand that he is where he is in life as the president because of a framework that has worked for him. And it has worked from him commercially, through real estate, through economic and business transactions, but it has also worked for him in some scenarios politically as well. You need to be able to take tactics like this, utilize them in your own life where applicable. Be tough in public, but be lighter and more cordial in private. Apply your leverage where applicable so that everybody can see, and you get crowd sentiment on your side. And in private, once you have that leverage that has been in some ways artificially manufactured, then utilize lighter, more interpersonal negotiation tactics to be able to bring your deal to pass. So that is a wrap on the 11 steps or the 11 key tactics for the art of the deal, with a focus on the one that we think is the most important and that is utilized to great effect in today, in general.
Thank you everyone for listening. Have a good day. We'll be back next week for 4th episode of Modern Protagonists. Thanks.